say where, when, how it should be applied, rather than it should never be applied or it should be applied carte blanche. Much go into more of a nuanced sort of. So and it'd be great, that's why we picked. Well, it's a really great panel actually. It's fantastic to have these folks here because I think we've got a range of different perspectives. None of them are like fiercely pro or anti, I don't think. And we'll hear through their combined presentations, we'll hear sort of a range of different perspectives and take that on board and hopefully go away with something. And maybe Bristol can be one step closer to having a bit of a path and a signpost forward to kind of what is the right approach. So we don't see much else really.
No.
Just sort of,
the only thing I should clarify is that Bristol Energy Co-op
Yeah.
facilitating this event is very clearly neither pro nor anti. We recognise there may be a place for it, but I don't think there's consensus on how or when or where or why at the moment. Yeah.
power this up. And then I think we will ask Paul, I think first, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're all right to click through your own slides. It's probably easier then when you get a sense of control as well.
So unfortunately, my job to try and keep the speakers to time, which is 10 minutes each, and then we'll have about 40 minutes for like an open floor debate.
There we are. So if we find it, we'll find the laptop and it will should wake up. This is why it always wake up. You can have an espresso.
Yeah,
What we do for this thing, pour espresso into it. Obviously, we checked the AUV before we started. Shouldn't it? Let's go down to HDMI and see if that helps. Oh, that's another thing to check, isn't it? It is actually plugged in. How good are you at living for?
Okay, but it's probably better.
We'll get it working. I have no slides, so I'm happy to speak if you want to choose your. We could do that. I could fiddle around in the background.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was working 5 minutes
I'll
ago.
speak because I'm speaking without any slides at all or anything.
That's
Or
great.
whatever.
Great.
Thank you. And then you
Thank
can
you.
do whatever you need to do. And
Thanks,
hello.
Sophie.
I'm Ricky Davis, and I'm the MD of the Biomass Energy Co-op. We're a cooperative based in the northwest of England that installs biomass boilers. So we know all about the technical, mechanical issues connected with the boilers and everything that goes with that. So questions about that are welcome at the end. I don't propose to go through those things at this point because I'm destined to be talking about something else, about closed cycle. I'll illustrate my point coming from my own experience. I'm someone who's had a lot of experience managing, operating community buildings. I've got a responsibility for quite a large number of buildings as we speak. Basically, they're social clubs and community centres of various sizes. And so therefore, I'm very familiar with plant rooms, very familiar with energy costs, and very familiar with the type of issues that we get about people using buildings, forgetting to switch things off, put them on, and all that malarkey. And I came at biomass from that point of view. I also came at the cooperative movement from a little bit of that point of view as well. My wife, Angela Davis, who you might have heard of, is the person who set up the Cooperative Enterprise Hub, which helped lots and lots of co-ops throughout the country set up. So that's how we became a co-op. We started, and I'm the founder, if you like, because I was aware of the fact that there was lots of waste products, organic waste products. I was aware of biomass, but I was aware of lots of waste, particularly in agriculture and in industry, that could be, because of its chemical composition being very similar to wood or even being wood, such as fruit stones and kernels of all descriptions and stuff out of the brewery and other industries, whether that couldn't be used for biomass. So I didn't come at biomass from the point of view of burning wood. I came at biomass from the point of view of burning clean waste streams that were very light wood, but which would otherwise go to fallow. And that was how I entered the fray, so to speak. And the first thing I had to do was get a team around us that could actually fit these things. I'm not a biomass engineer, I'm not a heating engineer. So we recruited a team of people and we got a proper business together. And we started obviously because what I'm going to talk about, which is multi-fuel biomass, doesn't really exist as a commercial concept in this country at all. And so you have to start somewhere. And where we started was installing biomass boilers that burn wood. But what we also did at the same, and we've cut our teeth, and you'll see in the literature at the back there that there's plenty of case studies of what we've done. So we're now 5 years on, proper biomass boiler installer, all the certifications, insurance, everything that you ever need, all the experience of all the different problems that can occur. However, from the very beginning, we wanted to have a boiler that would do more than just burn wood, because we realised very, very quickly that in order to generate a supply chain, if you like, of these waste streams, you had to have an end user. You had to have something that would use this product that you'd created, the fuel that you created. So we needed a network of boilers, and that's where we're at the moment, trying to install lots and lots of biomass boilers that, whilst they're burning wood at the moment, have got the potential and have got the capability of burning other streams as they come on board. And persuading industry and other people, large users, we're not domestic, persuading large users, such as this building that we're studying now, to actually look at a biomass proposal that will start off with the existing supply chains that exist, and we'll always be able to rely back on those supply chains, which in this case is wood pellet, but also be able to switch when possible and when streams allow and come on board to other stuff, such as olive kernels, such as coffee ground, such as specially grown energy crops, such as miscanthus and the like. But in other words, clean streams, not dirty wood, old pallets, none of that malarkey. Proper, clean, pure streams that can be pulled out. So in Manchester,
Ricky, can I just say?
So I'm going to go on the.
Yeah, but could you say something about the efficiency of those other streams, and also in the last few minutes say something about the renewable heat incentive?
Right, okay.
Should we be taking advantage of it?
The streams are as efficient as wood, in as much as what happens when you put it in a boiler, the energy that's produced. But they're more carbon neutral because they're usually waste streams that would otherwise go fallow, or they would, in this particular case, in some olive kernel. That's how it comes out. That's the little pick when you go to your dinner party. It's been crushed up as a part of an industrial process, and that's how it looks after that industrial process is finished. It's dried in the sun in somewhere like Valencia or Greece, and it's a genuine waste product, which is a wonderful biomass product and used all over the Med, and could easily be, and is easily used in this country. So they're just as efficient going into the boiler, but they're much more efficient because they're not. You don't have to cut down a tree. You don't have to artificially make a pellet in order to do it. Sometimes you have to make a pellet, of course, like in the case of rape straw, but the rape straw is a waste stream rather than something that you've created by harvesting. So in relation to the RHI, which is the RHI, Renewable Heat Incentive, is the government's equivalent of the solar's feed-in tariff. And basically, it rewards and pays a price, an incentive of currently between 3.5 and 5.1 pence a kilowatt for burning this product in a biomass boiler. And therefore, that sort of number equates to an ability for a building such as this, or smaller buildings than this, to generate enough money over the 20 years of its cycle to pay for the boiler and pay the lion's share of the heating cost itself, the fuel cost itself. So it's a very valuable thing. It gets paid every quarter. You just submit a meter reading from your heat meter on your plant room, and the Ofgem do the rest.
And what like the commercial realities when the renewable heat incentive comes to an end?
Well, we're 20 years away from, or 25 years away from that. It's supposed to work until 2021. The bottom line is I want to be with the Biomass Energy Co-op in a situation where we're developing waste streams which are cheaper than pulling in imported wood. Yeah? We need imported wood to pump prime the biomass project and to rely on as a consistent stream. There's lots and lots of biomass now, lots, huge supply streams of it, because this government heat incentive, renewable heat incentive, has been around now since 2012. Industry, large property owners, national trusts, that sort of people have taken advantage of it. I do some consultancy work for the Catholic Church. There's a couple have gone in the area that I work for, and they're earning between 11 and 15,000 quid a year for a piece of kit that costs them 60, and that's for 20 years. You can imagine it's a no-brainer if you're a property manager and you've got capital sat there. So that's created a huge market for the fuel, and therefore the supply chains are in place. My argument, and I'm finishing, my argument is that you use those supply chains, you use that technology, you get it all in place, and then you start developing alternative supply chains, pulling waste out of cities and out of industrial processes, fruit stones and all those other things that I've talked about, and then you replace the wood supply chain with those, and you have a much more ethical solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No one yet.
So we could try, if anyone else has got another computer that we could try.
Laptop.
Does anyone have a laptop that's got some battery on?
The thing is, it has been working,
Yeah.
so it really shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Give it a go. This one
That'd
says
be great.
computer in the two different computer ins. We'll try it. It's just a thought. No, when it turns out, we'll try turning that lead in, and then we'll try plugging that in.
No.
Give it a go now.
Are any of you happy to not have
That's fine. You got that plug?
Let's see if we can get this working, and if not, then
What's really freaky is my screen's now actually completely blank. So we kind of like started with it all working perfectly before, then it's not working so well now. It's really unhappy. What are you doing? Full of viruses.
I guess one last question I had for you, Ricky.
Sorry?
Another question I had for you while we're waiting is, what's the efficiency of those other streams compared to Colin's?
I don't know. From a scientific point of view, the efficiency of biomass compared to fossil fuel streams is.
In terms of the carbon.
Obviously, fossil fuels have got all that carbon that have been locked away underground wherever for millions of years.
But the energy
The energy,
the
yeah.
energy that we use in,
Yeah.
not that, the energy that we need to put into those other streams that you're talking about to get the equivalent amount of energy out
Right.
as conventional fuel.
To make a wood pellet, you have to put a certain amount of electricity. I think you're going to be covering a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but there is an energy in,
Yeah.
because obviously you've got to deliver a solid fuel which is less efficient than piping it and whatever else.
Yeah.
They work best replacing other solid fuels, but you've also got to consider the other issue, which is the finite quantity of the amount of gas, the creation of demand for fracking. There's lots of other considerations. If you can replace with renewable heat solutions, then you're driving down dependency on other fossils.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not going to cover what my colleague here is going to cover. Person I sit next to, that sort of person. So, but otherwise, obviously it's much more efficient. The closed loop of a carbon cycle is that it takes 30 years to grow a tree, or even a lot less if it's an energy or a fast-growing willow, and that's capturing all the carbon, and then when it's burned, it's releasing again. So that's a bit shorter than a couple of million years that it's been in the ground as a fossil fuel. So that's if you like the science. I'm still waffling, and I can see a picture, so I can sit down.
It's getting there, isn't it? 2016. It is 2016, right?
Hoverboards.
It used to be.
Still a bit away from hoverboards.
Yeah.
You referred a couple of times to the waste streams that you business using going to fallow. And I just wonder what you mean by that actually. Is that a
Well,
northern expression or is
Yeah, it might be a northern expression. I mean, like in northern Africa, they burn the olive waste if they can't get rid of it, just to reduce it. So in straw and there are composting processes that release all the carbon dioxide, carbon into the atmosphere. Anyway, so that's what I meant. The idea that it's going to be, it will rot. Probably fallow is the wrong word. But,
I guess I've thought about it because recently I sort of was getting more familiar with the Soil Association. They've got a campaign around organic farming.
Whoa.
Actually, there's a concern around the let's say like slurry. So slurry you can put into an AD plant and put onto the field, and so obviously the Soil Association are quite keen the slurry goes on the field, so you maintain the integrity of the soil, and maintain the kind of organic farming. Or alternatively, you can put slurry into an AD digester and create renewable energy. Clearly, there's a conflict there about what is better. So I was just wondering whether yes, it may appear to be a waste stream, but actually, some of those things might be European uses something useful, and actually there may be a conflict there.
Could we maybe just pause that now that we've got and come back to that with the debate at the end and try and get through the talks first? Thank you.
Just on that point though, on slurries, if you on the farm, if you just leave slurries uncovered, you get methane emissions. So putting it through an AD system is better because you'll reduce emissions. And through the digestion process, the nutrients become more available to plants when you apply it to soil. So actually, it's much better to do AD, but we'll come on to that at the end. So yeah, I'm Paul Adams. I work at University of Bath. Also part of a research consortium with a number of different universities and industrial partners. Supergen Bioenergy Hub. There is a website, you can Google it, but there's various different work we're doing on all different aspects of bioenergy. I'm going to try and give a quick, speedy overview of the context of biomass and bioenergy. This is just like UK consumption of primary fuels, and you can sort of see at the bottom, well, you might be able to move in the way, but bioenergy and waste is kind of increasing slowly. Our total energy is, it's gone up a little bit and come down a little bit in recent years probably because of EU directives as much as anything else. But also we're quite heavily reliant on natural gas and coal and obviously petrol for transportation. In terms of how energy consumption has changed over time, I mean, I guess the domestic demand has stayed fairly constant, but demand for sort of transport fuels has increased hugely over the last sort of 30 or 40 years. Industrial use has obviously gone down as we kind of get more of our goods from overseas. This is sort of a breakdown of different electricity generation. So you sort of see the sort of base load coming from nuclear. I know there's an announcement today about EDF's investment in the Hinkley Point, which we can talk about later. Sorry. So it's nuclear, natural gas, oil, coal, and other fuels. So nuclear, natural gas, oil, coal. So you can see the use of coal has come around massively, and it's probably even up here. And then other fuels being mainly sort of biomass and bioenergy. So just to give some context, really. Again, renewable energy has gone from a very small amount of contribution to quite a lot higher, and that is mainly driven by the EU Renewable Energy Directive, which you're supposed to, well, who knows what will happen by 2020, but we're supposed to achieve 20% reduction, 20% renewables and 20% reduction in greenhouse gas by 2020. But it just shows, again, biomass and bioenergy being quite a big contributor to the renewable fuel mix, much bigger than some of the other technologies. I guess one advantage biomass has over other renewables like solar and wind is you can store the energy and you can have it on demand, whereas obviously sun and wind are kind of heavily reliant on the weather, and that gives biomass a big advantage. So when everyone turns their kettle on during the half time of the football, you need that thermal energy that you can just turn on. You can't do that with a lot of renewables. Again, more statistics, you probably can't see that, so I won't dwell on it. Right, you're welcome to these slides. It's just not, you're not going to see it. So, yeah, same sort of context setting, really. Yeah, I mean, trees are great. Effectively, they give us a lot of useful resources. They sequester carbon in the soil. They, produce biodiversity, helpful for cleaning the air and all that kind of stuff. But there are obviously issues with cutting down trees. But the point I want to make is a lot of wood going into biomass isn't necessarily kind of deforestation directly because of the way it's sort of managed. In most developed countries, it's highly regulated. You can't just get timber from any old place. You have to kind of have a chain of custody and know where it's coming from. So in terms of the benefits of trees, you obviously get nutrient recycling. You get sort of builds up organic matter in the soil. And then you obviously build up a root structure which kind of reduces runoff. So you'll see in certain parts of the country, particularly in the east of England, where there's a lot of algal farming and sort of hundreds of years of intensive farming has kind of reduced soil structure. So you actually see like a lot of in Norfolk and Suffolk, you see patches of woodland next to fields, basically to stop the soil from disappearing completely. So it does gives a lot of organic matter. So yeah, trees. I think we need to talk more about the value of trees. One of the issues is sort of greed, basically. So obviously a lot of the sustainability rules that have come in the last 3 or 4 years for biomass have been driven by the sort of issues around deforestation and unregulated timber. But I mean that has really stopped now. So under the RHI or the Renewables obligation, which is large scale electricity, you have to comply with sustainability rules, which is effectively land criteria, so sourcing it from sustainable sources and proving your greenhouse gas emission savings. So yeah, these are some of the issues that you get when greed comes into the equation. So habitat loss, soil damage, runoff. So yeah, as I've sort of said, governments do know about this. There's quite tight regulations around it. Renewable Energy Directive from the EU being one, and Ofgem kind of regulating schemes from feed-in tariff and RHI. But yeah, I mean, the important thing to think about in terms of greenhouse gas emissions is because trees are so valuable, they have different uses. So you'll find in forest, the main bit of wood doesn't necessarily, it's pretty unlikely to go to bioenergy because the value of wood going to like timber markets is much higher, really. So generally speaking, most biomass coming into the UK from North America is the biggest source, is generally speaking residues or sawmill cuttings. So we wouldn't use the term waste because it isn't a waste, it's a residue. So Ofgem classify 3 types of biomass: products, being stuff you've just grown, residues, which has got an alternative competing market, and waste, which is something that's discarded. But that's an important point to make because the perception is biomass is, taking over a lot of land and so on. But the other thing to bear in mind is because of Kindles and electronic stuff, we actually read less books. So there's a hell of a lot of forestry in sort of North America and other parts of the world, which has actually seen a massive reduction in demand. But to get the best environmental benefit, you have to continue to manage those forests. So that kind of involves continuing the sort of production of it, really. How are we doing for time?
You've got like a couple more minutes, and I wondered if you could say something about biomass. It's not renewable and it's not zero carbon.
Okay, I think you're going to talk about air quality, aren't you? So I'll skip through this. This is just about local air quality. Come back to it, but I'm sort of making a comparison between domestic and industrial. So this is my answer to your question. Again, not the biggest, but this is a bioenergy system on the left and a fossil energy system on the right. Is biomass carbon neutral? The answer is it depends on the technology, it depends on the feedstock, it depends on how it's processed. So obviously you have harvesting, processing, transportation, storage, which all have emissions associated with them: diesel use, fertilizer use. But obviously fossil fuel resources are finite and biomass resources are renewable. So yes, biomass is completely renewable, but is it zero carbon? And the answer is it depends. So in the example of slurries, you can actually get negative emissions because if you don't manage the slurry effectively, you get a lot of methane emissions going off into the atmosphere. So you can get negative emissions the other thing as well is you can capture the carbon. So when you're combusting fuel, you could in theory have carbon capture and storage, carbon capture and replacement, where you actually use the carbon dioxide in food and drink industry. So like fizzy drinks and stuff, we use a lot of carbon dioxide. So there's, it's not very straightforward, but everything has emissions associated with it in the supply chain. And the other thing to bear in mind is, again, you can't see this, but this says agricultural waste, residue, energy crops, forestry, and industrial and domestic waste. And all of these have different kind of technologies. So you've got fermentation, anaerobic digestion, gasification, combustion, other technologies. But you've also got different end uses. So.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh. What did I do? Just keep it slightly out there.
That's right.
Excellent.
But effectively, there's the things to bear in mind with biomass and bioenergy is so diverse. I mean, just think of all the biomass materials there are in the world. It's huge, and there's also a lot of conversion technology. So it's about optimizing the right pathway. So from your feedstock to your end use, that often isn't just straightforward combustion. It could be, fermentation or AD, that sort of thing. So I'll go to my next slide anyway. A lot of heating on here. So I was going to talk about the relative emissions compared to fossil fuel technologies. But I mean, essentially, biomass, regardless of the supply chain you have, most of it is subsidised in the UK and the EU through the renewable heat incentive, feed-in tariff, and renewable obligation. Because of that, it has to meet sustainability rules. So the minimum percentage saving you have to have against the fossil fuel comparison is 60% saving. So although it's not carbon neutral in a lot of cases because of the emissions from the supply chain, to get the subsidy, you have to verify that it's 60% saving, basically. So, I'd say in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it really does, there's a lot of variability, and you can get everything from negative through to low carbon, some zero carbon. But I mean, obviously you want to optimise the location of the fuel, the form the fuel is. If it's very dry, it's probably better just to combust it. If it's very wet, probably do something like fermentation or anaerobic digestion. And transportation as well. People often think about shipping biomass into North America being ludicrous, but actually you're talking about sort of megajoules of energy, sort of transporting gigajoules, the relative scale. So although obviously there are emissions and energy associated with moving it, in terms of the whole life cycle, it's pretty minimal, to be honest. And it depends again on the density of the product. Here we go. This just gives you an example of biomethane. So biomethane being renewable gas, and that's taken off a lot in the last 3 or 4 years because of the RHI. But your emissions profile. This is compared to sort of power production from coal. You've got the UK power mix. The German power mix, which has got more coal in it than the UK power mix, and then you've got natural gas. So natural gas is probably, generally speaking, at least half the emissions of coal. Gas burns a lot sooner, really. But in terms of different pathways, you get a lot of variability depending on whether it's a waste or residue, whether you're using it to combine heat and power, heat or electricity, really. So apologies, you can't see the detail, but just to illustrate, really. So and this is some work the Environment Agency did a few years ago that mentioned some of the feedstocks from earlier. These are typical emissions profiles compared to gas and compared to coal. So you do get a large savings, but no one size fits all with biomass. It's very much where's your resources, what end use energy do you want to get, and what's the best pathway to get there. In terms of efficiencies, obviously combustion for electricity, you might only get sort of 40% efficiency, whereas heat you sort of get 70, 80, 90%. And obviously combined heat and power, when you combust any fuel, you obviously for electricity you lose a lot of the primary energy in heat. So obviously combined heat and power is making advantage of the heat as well, because you're getting a much more efficient think that'll stop.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Thanks so
Sorry,
much.
it's a bit rushed. but that's
Yeah,
it.
Yeah, we're not yet.
See what
Break it.
technological challenges we
Was
can
that in everything?
It was, yes.
Perfect. You can sort of introduce yourself and get started while I sort this out for you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ben Williams. I work for the Air Quality Management Resource Centre at the University of the West of England. We focus on air quality in a range of different fields, from health to the impact of development on health and the air quality associated with development. So we've got a broad range of research expertise, basically.
That one.
Yes, whichever one you want to do. Brilliant. What I thought I'd do today is just bring it back to the air quality side of things, because air pollution is a massive issue globally, not just globally, in the UK and locally as well. So I just want to give a perspective on air pollution as it is now, and then just towards the end we can have a look at biomass and is it a problem or not. So should we care about air quality? Well, yes. It's the world's single largest environmental health risk. That's from the World Health Organization. 7 million premature deaths. That's 1 in 8 of every person who dies globally can be attributed, in some sense, to air pollution. In terms of the impact on illness and the deaths, ischemic heart disease is 40%, stroke 40%, COPD 11%, got lung cancer in there as well, and you've got respiratory effects in children. So there's a broad range of impacts, and these are the ones that we are fairly confident, and the World Health Organization are confident enough to talk about. But there are other effects that are just slowly creeping through. There's links to mental health issues as well, and potentially epigenetic changes, so your triggers on your genes, whether they're active or not, can be passed down generations. So the potential to have a long impact on society. So there we are. That's the end. No. Locally, it's a bit blurry, but in terms of number of deaths attributable to air pollution in our area, Bristol here has got about 5.5% attribution to air pollution, which is about the same as the UK, so equivalent with the UK average. Further west you go, southwest you go, so the Isles of Scilly, about 2.8% attributed to air pollution. It gets down in the nice countryside. But we shouldn't move away from the fact that we do choose air pollution. My phone needs to be charged every 10 minutes. It's absolutely rubbish. So I have to get energy from somewhere. And when we have biomass installations or any other installation, we've got to remember that we are the users of that regardless. Our willingness to accept air pollution changes over time as well. So in the 50s and before, you had terrible smogs attributed to air pollution from coal. I'm from the South Wales valleys, from the coal fields, and my grandfather's generation used to put their clothes out on one day a week when everyone stopped burning coal. So everyone said on a Thursday, we're going to stop burning coal, we can dry our stuff. So obviously that was acceptable back then. If I went back home and asked for that, it wouldn't be happening. So our response to air pollution changes dramatically. And we've gone from that visible air pollution to the stuff you see kind of stacks in pictures from all over the world, to something that you can't see and you can hear it going past. You can't see it, but you can smell and taste it though. In Bristol, we have these smoke control zones. All of Bristol is covered by smoke control zone. How many of you knew we had a smoke control zone? Far more than average. How many of you know about the air quality management area in Bristol? These are really important things to have knowledge about when we're talking about pollution from these types of areas. So the air quality management area in Bristol, as an example, is mainly to do with cars. We have lots of congestion, lots of emissions, lots of pollution. And it's essentially designed around where we live. So if you're going to be exposed to air pollution from vehicles, then we need to do something about it. And Bristol City Council developed air quality action plans to address that. And those are available on the website, I'm sure. On the Bristol City Council website. I'm pointing at you, sorry. So is there an air quality issue with biomass? And I'm talking predominantly about domestic, but you can apply the same logic to the bigger developments. There's potential to be an issue. So you can reduce the energy consumption from power stations that are kicking out huge numbers of pollutants. But in doing so, you could be increasing local air pollution. So you've moved it away from where John Evelyn suggested in the 1600s outside the cities, and you're bringing it back into where we live. So potential issue there. If you're going to install domestic biomass and you're going to use fuels, then you should really follow heaters approved installation technologies and fuels as well. I put a link at the back of the slides to Heaters' website as well. And there's an obligation for the local authority here as well under the Clean Air Act. So Bristol City Council have got these clean air zones, these smoke control zones. And within that act is the requirement that no one emits smoke from their chimneys. So if you're in a house and you've got some loose wood in the garden and you chuck it in your burner and it's belching out all stuff, the local authority have a right to knock on your door. And in essence, they have a right to fine you as well for doing that. And the same with people who sell wood. If they sell wood that is going to be smoky to someone who lives in a clean air zone and deliver it to those people, then they are at risk as well of being fined. So there's obligations under the Clean Air Act of 1993. So be careful around that. Can biomass be air quality friendly? Definitely. If you go from really dirty coal that burns a lot and gives out a lot of emission, and you put in something that is designed to reduce emissions, then yes, biomass is definitely friendly. If you go from somewhere where you're just burning gas as your fuel, and then you put it in a burner, then you've gone from no emissions to some emissions. So there is that negative way as well. So that was a real blast straight through that. There are reading materials here, so you've got the Clean Air Act with a link there. There's biomass and air quality guidance for local authorities in Scotland, predominantly through Environmental Protection UK, we're a great organisation. You've got definite smoke control rules, so you've got the list of the fuels and the types of burners that you're allowed to use, and there's the link to the Heaters website. So if you do want to install and burn, follow their instructions. Thank you.
So who's next?
So, welcome.
Yours got data.
So yeah, we'll post all of the, if you're happy for us to post the slides and the links on the website, then we'll make sure they're available in the next couple of days.
Good evening, my name is Paul Barker. I'm the Energy Manager for Bristol City Council. And what I'm doing now is mostly delivering district heating networks. But in the past, and still as part of the heating networks, we've been installing biomass boilers. So just give you sort of a quick history of why and how and what we've installed in Bristol, and the future really as we can think at the moment. So first question is why biomass in Bristol? So back in 2003, I think we had some low carbon Bristol study done, wasn't that type, something like that, and it's recommended we look at technologies like biomass. There was no biomass boilers in Bristol at the time. I think there was probably one biomass boiler in the southwest, and that was about the equivalent to, in Austria at the same time, they had 100,000 biomass boilers. So we were a little bit behind the curve in terms of developing biomass and I put zero carbon, obviously discussion about how zero, but it was, if we're going to get particular buildings, we're looking at our own buildings at this point, a school or an office, to be zero carbon. How would you do it? Well, electricity, solar panels. How would you do the heat? Well, okay, have lots and lots of solar panels and do zero carbon heat from that. But actually, in reality, the only thing that's going to work at a building level is biomass, or a very small energy from waste plant in your basement. Obviously, you can't do that. And also the fact that we've got a potential within Bristol to self-supply. So we, as an authority, have a lot of street trees, we've got a lot of woodland, and that needs managing because the trees grow and they get a bit too big, and some of them blow down the wind, and they need branches lopping off. And I think we produce around 3,000 tonnes a year of waste arboricultural items that we had a problem with it. We generally had to pay to get rid of it. Some of it could be lost in woodland, but generally it was a problem that we had to deal with as well. So there was another benefit there in terms of our thinking around installing biomass. So after that, we had the Centre for Sustainable Energy identified a couple of sites where we could try and put some biomass boilers in and start looking at that as a technology, which led to the first installation that was involved with back in 2006, which is at Blaze Nursery. So it's a picture of the kind of service of the contract at the moment. We have piles of this wood chip was turning up and rotting, and it was a fuel. So what can we do about it? So what we did with Blaze, that was a nursery, so it produces it will grow plants to bedding plants, sell that across other local authorities as well. And that was using LPG and oil to heat those polytunnels. And so actually quite significant carbon costs as well as energy costs. So, and we also had at the site quite a nice big patch of land where this chip was being dumped and then taken somewhere else. And it was like, well, actually this is a potential for us to install a biomass boiler to supply those polytunnels, but also kind of close a circle and utilise our own wood fuel. Partly that was because we wanted to do it, but also because I couldn't at that point phone up and go, can I have 30 tonnes of wood fuel next week, please, my biomass boiler. There simply wasn't a fuel supplier of wood fuel in Bristol that just didn't exist. So that's what we have. There's a picture of an Austrian. Austrians are the leaders in biomass boilers, and they were then and they still are now. So it's a Binder boiler. It's Clean Air Act approved. So it's gone through the various tests as well as other kind of European tests for emissions. And there's a thermal store there. Biomass like coal and other sort of solid fuels. It's not like gas that you turn on your gas boiler and bang, you've got heat. There's a slow build-up. So there's various things and complexities around biomass that make it, as a technology, actually really quite complicated. And the other thing we had to do was, this is the old heaters there, which were just burning gas from lit and got heat blown out. So we had to put like a wet heating system like you have in your home, and blowing this kind of like a radiator in reverse, blowing the heat out into the polytunnels. So what we did then is sort of develop this wood fuel station. So we've got lots of hard standing now, and that's enabled us to supply wood fuel to our other sites. It's a barns and a tractor and a chipper. The chipper is it's an Austrian chipper again. There we go. It's got a Terminator. So that's because it's Arnold Schwarzenegger from Austria, or is it choose wood? But anyway, we've got one of those. And as we were developing our biomass, so we had a lot of new. This is a PFI school as part of the Building Schools for Future programme. We were starting to push for our new buildings to have lower carbon emissions. So some of the technology looked at with biomass, and this is quite an early, it's called hut bin delivery, and let's say you wouldn't do it that way now. I won't say anything more than that on that one. This is a sports pavilion, and from here, the rationale for this bit is at Netham, it's right in the middle of the park, so it costs an absolute fortune to get the gas network to that particular building. So actually putting a biomass boiler was also lower carbon and also save us some money. So that's a small boiler. I think we've now got a smaller boiler than that there now, 150 kilowatts. So it's kind of about sort of that size really, not very much to it. And we've now got in Bristol around 15 biomass boilers, so spread across the city. Not all are working, and part of that is only some of them can comply with the renewable heat incentive, and the ones that do, gas price at the moment is really low, which is making it very challenging for us to be on the affordability side. We've got a few buildings. This is Butler House. This is we put this in a couple of years ago. What we were quite fortunate with this scheme is that we managed to get British Gas to pay for it, they have what's called eco obligations, energy company obligations to put in zero carbon technologies and water installations. They pay for that, but we also claim the RHI, which allows us to offset the energy costs to the fuel poor. So it's a social housing block with generally for older residents, and we can save them 10% on their bills. So that's a win-win in terms of fuel poverty and low carbon. Just a quick one about planning in Bristol. Biomass is considered zero carbon. There's arguments about actually how zero it is, but when we, as part of new build within Bristol, you have to have 20% renewables on that building. So biomass is one of the options, as well as solar PV and others. But in fact, I don't really know, other than a few large buildings that have taken up putting in biomass, because it's a complicated, others may say, pain in the backside in terms of technology to get right and to work effectively. We've done it now in Bristol, in the Bristol City Council, but developers they don't like taking risks on. They'll just do the simplest. And generally for them, it's putting solar panels on the roof. So just quickly, how that links to heat networks. So we're putting heat networks or district heating within Bristol, and that's a key method of us decarbonising the city. Without heat network, we don't think we'd be able to do that. There's also other benefits around lower costs for developers in meeting their targets, security of supply. The thing about heat networks, we can put any kind of technology supplying that heat. It could be biomass, it could be gas CHP, energy from waste, you name it, generally it will go, it will work. So it allows us to be quite, we're not tied to any particular technology as we go forward. So, sort of picture of what it would look like. You have an energy sensor of some description, pipes into the ground, connecting all the buildings in your vicinity. And what we're trying to do is, this is pictures of Copenhagen, and I did a presentation a while back in London, and unfortunately I came after Copenhagen, which is a bit of a damp squib really, because it's fantastic, aren't they? So they were saying, yeah, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2020. My chin went quite low at that point. But that's the kind of the city we're trying to emulate, where pretty much everybody in that city are on a heat network, and they supply their heat from biomass power stations, energy from waste, and they've got very big flues, and I imagine that's very, very clean, because it's Copenhagen, it's Denmark, it's Sweden, isn't it? So I think that's maybe where we're going. We're going away from these smaller biomass boilers within cities, and probably, especially when we're competing against the gas network, and looking to that as a method. Now, in terms of where we locate that, ideally in industrial areas, and we're looking at the opportunities to connect those in Bristol. So obviously that's where we are now. You've got a gas network, you've got boilers in your home, you've got boilers in the or gas boilers at home, gas boilers in the basement of buildings, and then you've got all that waste heat from power stations. Drax probably is. So just a quick one on how a few minutes yet?
Yeah, you've got a couple of minutes.
Okay. So we're focusing our heat networks around the city centre. That's where there's a massive heat demand. Lots of buildings, lots of listed buildings, lots of buildings where there's actually a fat chance of biomass boilers going in those buildings, because there's no potential for fuel storage, which you need. So we will not be having biomass boilers in buildings, or very few, in the city. So we need to think about how we do zero carbon heat into the city, and that's where heat networks are coming in. What we've been quite fortunate in terms of meeting that zero carbon or lower carbon heat networks is the social housing blocks around Redcliffe actually were on coal when they were first built in the 50s. Then they converted to gas. But that means we've got some underground storage and potentially a very big plant room to allow us to put in a biomass boiler. It's a rare event, but we've got in there a 1 megawatt biomass boiler, which is reasonable size, but we've also got 4 megawatts of gas boilers in there. So we couldn't quite get zero carbon, especially not because we've got tenants there with their fuel poor. We need to make sure that they've got as low heating costs as possible. So that means we need to think about supplying them with gas, unfortunately, in the interim, and think what we need is a carbon tax, really. But anyway, I would agree with that. So we're looking to develop that heat network across Kemp and Redcliffe, areas of the city where there's a lot of new development happening. What we're trying to do is connect to those new developments and get the developers to actually pay us to pay for that network, and then ultimately that network would then go out. So picture of a 1 megawatt biomass boiler and lots of gas boilers on it there. So that's within the Broughton plant room. So that's all underground. You wouldn't see it. Very big flue all the way up to the top of the social housing block. And heat networks have to have pictures of pipe in the ground. Some pipe in the ground. And that's what we're doing across the city. Ultimately, again, focusing on the city centre. So these are all the areas that we're currently looking. It's again central business district, and then the bigger picture, if we want to do a Copenhagen, is get the heat from somewhere to the city centre. So we can't have. We're not really looking at any sort of biomass power station city centre. It's not a great place. So you transport that heat from other parts of the city, and what we have in Avonmouth and also in Sevenside, which is South Gloucestershire, is a number of energy from waste plants, and all the heat goes up the chimney. So we would like to capture some of that heat, please, that waste heat, and bring that back into the city, which is what the Swedes and the Scandinavians do. So just to round up really is, yes, we have got biomass as part of our heat networks. We've got no plans to install any more as part of the heat networks, partly because the gas price is so low, it's just not cost effective for us as a council to invest in that until carbon tax or something happens, or we get some more funding from central government. But we're feeling that they'll have to be part of the heat network in future, whether that's biomass power stations that generate heat and electricity, along with energy from waste, gas CHP, or other, hopefully some new technologies that come through. I think there is, meeting our zero carbon targets, I suppose, yeah, there is potential for the smaller biomass energy centres, but I think it's the bigger ones where you also have the potential to capture those emissions and the PM10s and 2.5s that obviously people are concerned about.
Great. That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? I'm hoping, and thank you all, we'll thank you all at the end, I think, but I'm hoping there's some questions from the floor. Just maybe to get it going, a couple of questions. Who came here feeling kind of pro-biomass? Yeah, okay. Who came here feeling maybe anti-biomass? Yeah, okay. And who came feeling really kind of balanced? You know what, that's actually pretty easy. That's probably slightly. And has anyone changed it? Doesn't matter which way on any of those. Has anyone changed their mind a bit since you've been listening? There's a few of those going on. But yeah, okay, yeah, right, brilliant. Okay, well, has anyone got any questions then? Mark,
in terms of the 1 megawatt biomass in the city centre, what is that burning? Is that burning arisings, or is that burning a specified supplied product? My concern is that with the tree arisings, it's not a very consistent product, and it's pretty quite low energy density. But I'm really curious as to what 1 megawatt of biomass in the city centre needs in terms of tons of fuel supply in a year.
Right, so that's actually pellet rather than wood chip, but partly various reasons why we chose pellet over wood chip, but certainly I don't have any particular issue with the street tree arisings in the quality of that. We need to meet various wood fuel accreditations to get the right quality. It's about how you separate out the good wood chip from the rubbish. So anything with any leaf material would have a very high ash content. So that goes somewhere else. It goes up to well, I think it's gone to bedding. It's gone to Slough Heat and Power for a while. We're taking it off our hands. We were focusing on the stuff that we can put in biomass boilers on a small scale. You have to have good quality wood chip for those, otherwise they just won't work. So they will belch out smoke if they're not getting decent quality wood chip. So you have to actually have a decent wood chip. But the issue with wood chip over pellet is that I think for a ton of so many cubic of wood chip, like 5 cube, I think, to 1 cubic of pellet. I can't exact the numbers, but there'd be a lot more fuel deliveries. I mean, for that 1 megawatt, it's probably around an average of once or twice a week in the cold winter.
How many tons in a year is likely used? That's what I'm really curious as to what the actual.
Yeah. Sorry.
What the output is in kilowatt hours.
Sorry.
And the output in megawatt hours. So I just want to get a feeling for
the
efficiency of it.
So that one megawatt boiler will produce around 8 gigawatts of heat. And in terms of tonnages of pellet, good grief.
Don't worry about that.
It's about 5,000 kilowatt hours per ton.
Yeah.
We're doing about 1.5 megawatt.
Yeah.
That's 300 tons.
I reckon you're about
It's just over 300.
About 30 megawatts per kilogram. And I'm a farmer, so I kind of know my energy.
It's 4,800 kilowatts per ton. It's pellet.
And it's about 3,000 something, isn't it, for chip?
Yeah, so it's inefficient because wood chip is not only more takes up more space, but it's also a lot more, lot less energy content.
It's to do with the moisture content.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so pellets have moisture content of sort of 5-8%, whereas wood chip, when it's cut, is probably 50. So then, would naturally dry down to 30%. So that's another thing to consider, is how dry it is, because obviously you get a higher energy output if it's lower moisture content.
I'd like to follow up on that question, Mike Andrews. Where are your wood pellets coming from?
So they are generally imported. So we have a contract with Forever Fuels, who have a depot at Avonmouth, and they change their feedstock. I mean, it's all EM plus accredited. We need it, various accreditations in terms of FSC or whatever equivalent to allow us to burn it in those biomass boilers. It has come from in the past from Scandinavia, where they generally have biomass CHP producing the pellets. So it's a closed circle and you've got the woodland around it. But recently we've got up from Portugal, and the reason for Portugal, so I was told, is that we don't use corks anymore in wine bottles. So a lot of this woodland was just no use for it. So they ended up converting.
Famous wildlife resource, the Dehesa forest.
Yeah. So I suppose it was scrubbed up potentially. There's no so it's definitely a benefit in Portugal. That was I couldn't tell you exactly what this year.
But that's interesting, isn't it? I wouldn't have expected that the biomass could have actual wildlife benefits. So you're actually maintaining that important cork habitat.
Not if they're cutting it down.
No, they're not cutting it down.
They're managing it.
The whole point
as
is
they
they're
would
continuing to manage it.
with cork. Yeah.
To continue, I spent a lot of time fighting wood pellet plants in Avonmouth, the Helios plant, and then subsequently the Blumica. And Drax have, of course, converted some of their boilers to wood pellet, biggest power station in Britain. And they are being fueled by cutting down old growth forests in the United States. They're cutting old growth forests. And that is totally irresponsible. And our government is subsidizing that. And these figures that you quote for biomass being carbon neutral depend on the figures that come out from the European Union, from their data. Now, a lot of that data was actually generated by the car companies, and you cannot believe it. And it's outdated now. It does not take account of change in land use, which is one of the most important factors. I used to, 12 years ago, I was putting rapeseed oil into my diesel Volkswagen. 80%, no change to the engine, ran the farm. then I read a paper by Paul Crutzen, Nobel Prize winner, who was one of the first to point out the problems of the embodied energy in these fuels and in fertilizers, etc., etc. And to say that they're zero carbon in my terms is rubbish.
Yeah. I mean, well, can I make a suggestion? Unless you've got specific.
I was just going to say on the draft issue, like they know every location of every source of wood that's coming into that fuel. They know exactly. You can see it on a GIS map. So they've got a very good chain of custody. They're getting subsidised through the government, yes, but as part of that they have to comply with sort of the regulatory framework. And the important thing to bear in mind is if you don't manage forests, then they're already managed forests. If you don't continue to manage them, you don't get the same benefit. And trees sequester more carbon during the growth stage of their life, and then they'll reach a point where they're not actually as productive. And so those sort of factors have to be taken into account.
There are NGOs in the States filming this destruction of forests. And they're not doing it for management. These are privately owned forests, and they're just doing it to make profit.
So I think one of the things that would be really good to get out of this is to list some of the concerns, because I think this goes back to that point right at the beginning, that nothing is wholly bad and wholly good, and we know that the damage that oil mining is doing in, say, Nigeria is far, but it's not. Well, I was going to say it's not oil per se that's bad. That's actually debatable, isn't it? Oil, I've not picked a very good example, but anything can be managed well or badly, and I think it would be good to make a sort of list of some of the key concerns. I think sourcing, so that kind of sourcing, and that spell it right to start off with. That's about the sort of the global location. That's about, what would you call that? The management practice for the growing. What would you call the concern?
Lack of management.
Yeah. Okay. So the management practice now, but
With habitat impact, isn't it?
yeah,
Is it the sort of
habitat. Because my starting point, if you like, was that I don't want to look at this as a good or bad thing. I want to look at how it can be good. If biomass is sourced right, managed right, transported right, burnt right, etc., where can it be good? And that's a really key
about
concern.
managing the risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's various legislation that manages that negative impact.
I've got a couple more questions.
Yeah, can we take the question from the lady at the back?
Yeah, well, it actually follows up from the last comment, actually. I just wanted to say that there are a lot of organisations in the United States, like the Dogwood Alliance, the National Resource Defence Council, who've documented really well that a lot of the wood pellets that are going to DRACs are coming from old growth forests and from whole trees. So saying that it's residues or offcuts or waste wood is really not true, and that's like there's a lot of NGOs working on that. So yeah, I think it's really important to reiterate that about imported wood pellets. And at the moment, like even with the amount of biomass we have at the moment, like the DRACs and the various other biomass power stations, we already import more wood into this country than we can possibly ever produce here. So in terms of land use, it seems really unsustainable. I'm sorry, that was a bit of a long comment.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's great.
And can I just clarify something on it? When you say land use, you think I'm guessing you're thinking we should be growing food. There's not enough food to go around, and that's you'd have a hierarchy for land use, that sort of thing.
Well, yes, I'd say we should be growing food, but also there need to be forests. Like at the moment, the amount of forest we have left in the world is reducing and reducing and reducing, and a plantation isn't the same as a forest.
So the debate that I cut off earlier when we had our technical issues, do you want to kind of have the chance to reignite that?
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
I mean, there's just a general narrative of what's the opportunity cost, and there's loads of opportunity costs associated. So it could be that the waste source that you're using could be used for an alternative source, or with land use, if you're using land to grow trees for growing energy, then you could use it for food. So yeah, it's not just the kind of chain of custody of the supply, but it's also what you displace by doing that.
It's also what you displace.
What's the alternative?
Ah. So is that about land or is that about other things?
So I'm broadening my
Yeah.
from specifically around your using nominally a waste stock, actually that waste stock used for something else, to which is essentially an opportunity cost, and land use change, with waste food is also.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess my question is like you mentioned the sort of regulatory framework. Do you think it's strong enough? Like that's what it all comes down to. Is what we've got strong enough to prevent some of this happening? And if there's holes in it, where are those holes, and how can we what needs to happen?
Well, I mean, the main thing I think of is biomass sustainability criteria. So if you're over a megawatt, you have to, well, if you're accredited under the renewable heat incentive or the renewable pitch, you have to report on your fuels every month or every quarter, depending on how big you are.
Just where they're coming.
Well, you have to. There's two main things you have to comply with. One is land criteria, and the other is greenhouse gas emissions. So if you don't meet those criteria, you don't get paid. And in most cases, it means that it's not economically viable. So the business case goes out the window. And the other thing says, if you're over a megawatt, you have to be independently audited. So the likes of DRAC will have auditors in there probably most of the year round, and they are verifying the source of this. I use the example of DRAC because it's a well-known example. But in terms of could it be strengthened, I mean, I suppose there is always one of the issues with how you account for greenhouse gas emissions is there's two approaches, like methodologically. One is called attributional life cycle assessment. So you're looking at the attributes of the supply chain, so your direct things, like diesel use and everything that you can directly look at. The other is consequential life cycle assessment, and that's where your kind of opportunity cost is and what your displacement comes in. Well, that's too complicated to regulate because it's just where do you draw your boundaries, and that's where the issues come in, and that's where policymakers have got the role to use that higher level. What are the consequences of our policy to promote or disincentivise? Because you can't regulate like the adverse impacts, but you can regulate the direct.
Because I mean, I don't know if this is already been today. I don't think it's okay to be using palm oil from Indonesia. It's obviously not okay. But at the same time, biomass as a sort of potential sustainable thing is surely seems like a no-brainer.
I mean, palm oil is an interesting one because it often gets a bad press in biofuels, but only about 2 or 3% of the palm oil is used in the biofuel industry. Most of it is in food and cosmetic products. Sure. But I agree.
By the way, as a product.
Yeah, but I mean, I suppose ultimately,
I try to avoid it.
Places like Malaysia and Indonesia would argue, the UK used to be mostly forest. We deforested for industrialisation. So, I agree there. But that's what I was trying to make the point earlier. It really depends on the resource you've got and using that most efficiently. I mean, the land use change issue is a big one, but generally speaking, a lot of the forests are going to continue to be forests. So managing them most sustainably is the most important thing. So if you can get a resource which is renewable from that, then yeah, great. But if you effectively in most of the European Union and most developed countries, you can't really source biomass from anywhere anymore. It's not really an option. You have to have the chain of custody, or you have to know where it comes from.
Okay. Got a question from Mike at the back.
Okay,
well, we'll come back. We'll give someone else a turn. We'll come back. If Mike goes at the back, is there anyone you had in your queue? Is there? No. Okay. So Mike, then we'll come forward to you in the grey. We'll go back to blue, and hopefully we'll have time to go. Oh, and then here. Okay, we've got to remember that order. Mike. Speak up a bit. Speak.
Okay.
Project.
I think it's quite an interesting point to pick up on the legislation and regulatory framework as to the sourcing and the ethics around where the biomass comes from. It seems to me that if it's sourced well, you can objectively define that criteria and regulate it and certify it properly in a clear way, in a way that's and enforce it properly, then it seems very, very good. But a lot of people have already raised a lot of issues in a lot of occasions where they say that NGOs or non-governmental organisations have identified kind of greed three examples, which is obviously a very good thing. It's a lot easier to chop down trees and excavate oil from the ground and all the rest, and that's seriously detrimental. So I was wondering if I'd quite like maybe each of the panels just to say, do you think the regulatory framework it's not just is it tough enough, is it enforceable? Because you can look at other
so you can have the right criteria there, but then there's the enforcement of them. There's two separate issues.
You go to finance, you go to the Environment Agency, you look at the kind of cuts to the enforcement, and is it actually effective in reality?
Can we keep this really quick? But yeah, it'd be nice to go, all four of you. Two questions. Is it tough enough, and is it enforced enough? Do you want to start, Ricky?
Yeah. We're not in control. There's lots of controls about where biomass sustainability comes from in terms of the wood importation. And once it goes out of this country, as is maybe has been alluded to, there's potential problems. So I can't, but inside this country, in terms of the criteria, it's quite strong. Well, strong enough certainly to ensure that it's clean. We can't say what goes on after. I can't. My colleague here can. He's a bit more knowledgeable about these things. However, in terms of clean air, that is a strong area. Its weakness comes when people chuck what they want on a wood fuel boiler, but I'm not suggesting that's in any way biomass. That's quite another thing. That's wood fuels. We're on a controlled fuel source rather than just old pallets.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is good what the framework we've got in place. It is important to bear in mind it's relatively recent. It's only the last few years that you're doing it. So I think there obviously is scope for getting improving it. But certainly when you look at greenhouse gas emissions, the government's policy intention has always been to start off with a 60% savings for electricity, but they're increasing that threshold over time. So and obviously air quality you have to comply with. You can't get accredited if you don't meet those kind of. But if you don't, I suppose there is a risk of small scale people that can kind of miss the loop. But the large scale ones are pretty tightly regulated.
Yeah, in terms of air quality, I think it's fairly robust. But as evidence emerges of different pollutants having different effects, then we should feel confident that all regulatory powers are taken that into account. But when we don't, then we should, without a doubt, have a right to question it and challenge it. And I think that's the most important thing to take away.
I think in terms of feedstock, it's probably okay as long as it's Europe. I'd like to see a push actually to more UK-based wood fuel, but that does come at a cost. And I think in terms of air quality, I don't actually think it's probably quite stringent enough. And I think there's been examples where we're aware of biomass boilers in Bristol and other areas that have got installed, and you kind of I'm sort of surprised they actually got through all the modelling and everything. And so I think there is
more to be done
on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, can I just following on for that, in terms of domestic biomass boilers, I think there is a place for the local authorities to have a more of some checking when people are using the right fuels and installing the right burners. That's one thing that is said. Apologies.
Should we go back to the...
In the context of the management of the local waste, be it woodland or other organic waste, does it make sense? Is it feasible to, instead of putting all the wood and other organic waste in biomass boilers, use another kind of technology like anaerobic digesters or other technology to produce, I don't know, biogas or other kind of fuel? Does it make sense?
When we're talking biomass boilers, it's essentially what I see that is it's wood, it's woody material, and generally it doesn't work very well. I mean, there are potential to demoralise it, but really you want kind of wet fuels for that. But people kind of have an expert view on that. But yeah, so I see the wood chip boilers, it seems to make sense that it's locally grown fuel in local boilers. So there is a cost to using local fuel. It's not, and we're looking at the wastewater. There's not a lot of woodland management that we do in this country because it's expensive to manage woodland these days, and there's not a great amount of demand for that woodland management. So, and especially compared to the as low at the moment, it's very typical for wood to compete without things like the RHI. So I think it will, as fuel energy prices and carbon taxes change, then we'll be able to look at using more of these more local sustainable.
We won't go through the whole panel. Anyone got anything burning? No pun intended. Or shall we go to?
I was just going to say that municipal solid waste streams, they're wetter, and it's probably more sensible to obviously use anaerobic digestion. But like, yeah, I mean, I agree with fuel. But I also it's thinking bioenergy, probably the major point in the presentation, isn't often just energy. Like anaerobic digestion, you can get many co-products. So you get the residue, which is an organic fertilizer, which has got high nutrient value. When you're combusting, you obviously lose some of that nutrient, but you do get ash, which can be used in like Scandinavian countries to return that ash to the soil. Anaerobic digestion, you're getting organic fertilizer. You can capture carbon. You can do quite sophisticated things with it. So it's all about the local resource and optimal technology.
Thank you. Quick, because I want to get
very quickly. When we talk about biomass in this country, we talk about wood. We're not talking about any other fuel. We're not talking about any other waste stream. Because ironically, it is the tightness of the air quality controls in this country, which quite rightly are there, but the lack of understanding, because anybody talks about biomass when we talk about wood, even in government, to think about the requirement to look at the way that we authorise other things to be burnt that are still wood, such as a fruit stone or an olive kernel. And therefore, one of the problems is that we are so focused, as we even have been tonight, on a single biomass source that has to be brought in from elsewhere, that we haven't got any sort of language to talk about the potential for homegrown other biomass things that work.
Great point. I'm glad you did make that.
Yeah.
Point at the back. Got a new one on the end of the queue, but
Yeah, and David wants to.
yeah.
My question is, what role will Bristol City Council encouraging the use of biomass boilers in such a planning stage? Presumably, the developer has to get planning permission to build a building or whatever, and the option of heating the building are presented at that stage. So could the city council say, well, look, this is feasible, we can give a biomass boiler instead of gas, instead of something else. It could be pushing the technology in that direction.
Well,
That's from it.
I can answer that very quickly, and it does, and Paul sort of alluded to it. So 20% of all planning applications or all developments in Bristol have to meet 20% of their residual carbon emissions through on-site renewables. You can't buy into the grid, 20%. Just out of interest, show of hands, who knew that? Definitely a minority. So that's a really good policy that we've got. It's one the government's allowed us to keep, and we do through that. There is a list of the acceptable renewables, and obviously PV is the big one. That's what most, I would say, probably 80% of developments is just PV. There are various heat pumps that are allowed, and biomass is. So we do. Bristol City Council does do that.
And is that ever traded away? You know how sometimes like with big developments is sort of like there's quite a lot of in planning. There's quite a lot.
There's one. There's the main one. If the scheme, say it's a really difficult building, say it's an old historic building that's marginally financial anyway, and that one extra would be the straw that broke the camel back and make it unfinancially viable, then yes, you can get away with it. But you have to prove that through an independently audit. Basically a financial assessment to say, you can't just say it's not financially viable. Anyone anything to add quickly, or should we go?
Just quickly that the part of the problem is biomass is not an easy technology compared to gas boilers. You put a gas boiler in, you forget about it, you might service it in a few years, that's about it. And the problem you have with biomass is more difficult, and that we've seen this in London, where developers said, yeah, I'm going to put a biomass boiler in and get 50% of this development is zero carbon, fantastic. And they never ever intend to switch that boiler on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's an issue. So it's what I'm really keen on. It's got to be energy efficiency first. It's got to be as much on site as fit and forget, like solar panels. And then if biomass makes sense, then yes. If not, connect to our heat network, and we'll supply you with heat from and that, which is a bit more controlled by the local authority, which is
would the council do due diligence on where they're getting feedstock from?
No, that's probably beyond our remit.
No, it doesn't, and that's a question, I think, isn't it? That's something that. Just for clarification, because I sort of dropped in there. So I work for the council, but I'm doing this not in the council capacity. But I said we, and I got carried away and put my council hat off. David, and then lady over there.
Yeah, I've been out of the loop for a little while on this, but I've got a kind of cascade of comment to question. The comment is that moving heat round, if it's economic, makes complete sense to me. What makes less sense is making heat for the sake of it without making power at the same time. What makes less sense still is subsidizing people just for making heat. As a physicist or a chemist, heat is what you get left over when you're trying to do work. Heat is a kind of waste product. And I couldn't believe the stupidity of our government in announcing that we were going to make this big first in Europe. We're going to subsidize people just for making heat. And I thought, that means there can't be a physicist within 100 miles of London. And I know that's not quite true. So that sort of worries me. But finally, there's cost curves going. I'm very happy in a way that we subsidized solar and bootstrapped it. But I see solar as the one technology that's going to have a vanishingly low cost over time, because it's sort of like a thin film you can smear over buildings, and you can store it as a gas, ultimately as hydrogen, once you've decided not to burn methane anymore. So there's a sort of combination of, there's a multiplier around making energy. And Paul, you hit on that with talking about anaerobic digestion, and that is if you pyrolyze timber, you create carbon, and carbon put in soils gives a massive multiplier in terms of capturing carbon in the atmosphere as biochar. And unless you have a conversation around biochar in this debate about just putting timber up chimneys, then we're really failing to understand the carbon cycle and the possibility of empowering soils to capture carbon and sequester carbon. And at the moment, I'm working on carbon sequestration through buildings and straw. And it worries me to talk about just, timber's great, it's lovely to burn it, it's almost efficient. And I think, that is so far from everything I know about biology and physics.
I don't think that's quite what we've been saying, David.
Yeah?
Just a few points in. I think it's just sort of swapping around. I think it's crazy that we're providing a subsidy to generators of power, not to use that heat. Heat's going underground, out of those stacks. Bonkers. That's where it should be. I think, unfortunately, the biomass heat and power has to be at quite a large scale for it to work. If somebody came around tomorrow with a small system, biomass CHP, fantastic. But it's just that the technology just isn't there, and I'm not quite sure it'll ever be there, to be honest. There's complexity, but we live in hope, I suppose. So that's sort of my point in terms of why I'm quite happy for the RHI, and also in terms of the cost, it's against fossil fuel. So and if you're thinking about how are you going to, if you've got a building, say a listed building that's 10 stories high, there's only so much solar panel you can put on the roof of that. How else are you going to, and this is a question I look at people answers, that if you're not going to utilise biomass or anything from waste to provide that zero or low carbon heat, where is it going to come from? Now the alternative is nuclear, because you have lots of electricity, you convert the electricity into heat, which then equally seems to be a buffer from one kind of energy to another. So I think that's a question there really is what if we don't use it, what are the alternatives?
Does anyone else on the panel want to respond?
We've got another question.
I mean, yeah, I think one thing I sort of struggle with personally, like conceptually, is having small scale biomass in cities where you've got probably the oldest gas network in the world, and it's very efficient to get gas in and relatively low emissions. To me, it seems we should be putting these biomass installations in off-grid places, because ultimately in rural areas, you've got feedstock there, and you don't have the distribution costs and stuff, and you don't have the same issues with air quality because the dispersants, pollutants are in my area. Yeah, yeah. So it just, I think, obviously biomass we're talking about being wood, but bioenergy is much broader than that. And I think another way is to decarbonise the gas grid by putting renewable gas in, and that's where the waste and residues come in. Really. But biomass has definitely got a place, and heat makes a lot of sense because I think heat is one of our biggest uses of energy, isn't it? Really, and, cold here in the winter.
So we've got this question, yeah.
So, I mean, apart from the sourcing problem, which we have like a lot of discussion already, so I'm more curious or interested in the processing part. Because you said like if we try to optimize the use of biomass, sometimes we rely on other technologies, for example, carbon capture and storage. So, but for carbon capture and storage itself, actually I read some articles and some people have like doubt on this as well. In that case, like how to implement it? In terms of carbon neutral.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did you hear the question?
No,
I'm not sure I fully understood the question.
Is it about carbon capture, the place of carbon,
Yes,
carbon capture?
Carbon capture and storage.
And storage in the.
Other like technologies we have to use during this process.
Yeah, so the processing part rather than the sourcing part, and carbon capture and storage, like you said, it's slow release. It's not like. So yeah, how do we really utilise it within how we use energy now? I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good point. I mean, like in this country, a lot of places, carbon capture storage isn't commercially viable. You need to have somewhere to store the carbon, and also there is a sort of energy penalty sometimes in actually capturing it in the geology. The other part of the question, I mean, the processing, it really depends on the scale, really, and where you're locating it. You're obviously not going to put big processing plants in cities, but you're going to, what happens in North America is they'll densify, they'll produce pellets, or they might, there's something torrefaction, where you're sort of effectively getting an even denser pellet, really, and that's close to the source of the biomass, so then you get the emission savings from the transportation. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of technology, and there's also pre-processing technology, so to make the logistics easier, and also to improve the efficiency. So it's difficult to comment on it because it's quite broad, really. But I mean, I would say it really does depend on the technology and the location of the feedstock.
So I know of 3 questions. We've got Mike and Bart want to come back. There's a new question there. Have we got time for 3 more?
We've probably
Just.
And then I guess it's like getting kind of not being. Do I want to say not being polite? But let's really sort of voice the things we want to say in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that
a
kind of a polite invitation?
Okay, so over there.
I just wanted to ask about boiler technology. There's a boiler down at Emshed, and I know that we have to have a peak demand for 48 hours before we actually enable it. And beyond 48 hours, before we disable the local demand. Is that sensible? And
That'd be a big boiler.
I better talk to my colleague who runs it to see what's going on. Because it should be. We have some interesting issues in getting that working because of the technology is very new in this country. It's still relatively new. There's a lot of people that installers that didn't know what to do, but we fixed it and that boiler works. And actually with the RHI, the Emshed's getting all the councils getting a relatively good input on that. So no, it shouldn't be 48 hours. I mean, generally what happens is the biomass boiler is charging a thermal store, and that thermal store is sitting there waiting to be utilised by Emshed. And hopefully Emshed is a very efficient building, and it shouldn't use as much heat as others. And so the boiler will switch off for days potentially, and only work when that thermal store is fully put. So that's how it should work.
And there can be an instantaneous because it's got what's called a short loop, so it doesn't have to charge the whole thermal store, which is basically a big tub of water, a couple of thousand litres of water. It can provide heat to the building almost instantaneously because it bypasses that until the thermal store is heated enough. So it shouldn't take 48 hours. It shouldn't take 48 minutes. So,
That's great to have that local example though, and sort of we know it's going on in Bristol.
Yeah, I don't know who's
Mark and then Mike.
I'll go for the local solution. Everyone talks about biomass in terms of we've got the Somerset levels, we can harvest 15 tonnes per hectare per annum off Somerset levels. We use the sun to dry the stuff, and now Krone, the German agricultural machinery manufacturer, are making what is not a baler, it's actually a cob, basically a cob maker, so it's processing effectively pellets in the field. So, and the great thing about haymaking, we make hay before people harvest grain. So in the southwest of England, we can harvest all the grass because you can't make any money with livestock. And basically it's completely renewable, and it doesn't take away from farming and food, because you can turn cattle out in the field or in the winter. It's very, very flexible. It's just an observation. And everyone keeps thinking about trees and biomass. It really, really frustrates me. It's the elephant in the room.
Can I support that? I mean, that's the bottom line. Trees are a means to an end. Biomass isn't the total solution for heating in this country, but it will provide some low carbon initiatives and solutions in situations like that. We've got to get it close to it. So we've got to get from the proximity point of view, we make the fuel and we create a network of boilers, they were burning wood, and then you switch over because you've got the network and it justifies the supply chain. Otherwise, and it can't do it, and I don't think it can do it, other than doing it like that. It's not necessarily just the answer.
No trade deal needed for that. Go on then.
Yeah, a couple of points. The first, both Pauls said, which I'm not sure that people realise, that none of these plants are cost effective without the subsidies. The other point that I wanted to make, you mentioned, Paul, that only 2% of palm oil is used for energy. And one of the reasons for that is that David and I here fought the palm oil plant at Avondale, which needed a plantation the size of Bristol to fuel it. There've been campaigns to stop these things happening. And my last point is that there's a fundamental problem with biomass, and that is the inefficiency of the photosynthesis process. If you drive down the M5, you'll see miscanthus growing. Miscanthus produces 0.75 watts per square meter. Even 10 years ago, PV panels were producing something like 20 watts per square meter. It's illogical.
And just to add a teeny bit to that, yes, but the sun only shines during the day and more in the summer. There's one of Britain's greatest chemists, a man called John Bockris, summarised 40 years of research in 1975 to show that you can create an economy that mixes solar energy and hydrogen, and you've got to defossilise the gas supply at some point. We've got to stop burning methane, so you switch over to hydrogen. This isn't fully understood yet by us, although it was fully explained in 1975. And that's Mike's point, is that the best source of generating energy is the sun, picking it up directly, and the best way to store it and transport it is the gas grid, for heaven's sake.
I think good news. Lawrence West are actually debating at the moment. All right.
I think time-wise, are we going to have this?
I mean, what I'm really thinking is how. And thank you, so much for this speaker. Thanks for, and if you're happy to, please send us your slides and we can post them on the website. And if you signed up via Eventbrite, we can ping it in an email to you.